All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Crispy Eye. My name is Chris Wagner, and today I've got a super exciting topic because this is one that I've been using for probably 5 or 6 years, ever since I started working with tabular models, since I started getting into Power Pivot. This is the learning curve that I kind of went on, and I've actually used this process to teach people how to evolve from where you are in working with data to where you can be and the potential of what you can do. So I'm really excited to share this broadly with people and not just in one-on-one sessions. I think this is very important for you if you're sitting there and you're brand new to working with tabular models, brand new to working with data. This can really, really help you out and get up and running. And for those of you who are working on training people on how to start to engage and build with tabular models, I think this is super helpful as well. All right, so let's head on over. I got some stuff to go over first, and we'll get into it. So, boom, let's head. There we go. Okay, so this is I'm gonna go small. There we go. This is my first Star Schema. You're starting to work in this space, starting to work on some of this stuff. You've heard about these things, but you don't really know what any of this stuff is talking about, right? You've just started to work with data. You've been working with big blocks of text, right? Like you have those old paginated reports that for the last 20 years, you download those into an Excel file. You take it and like Donald was saying inside the chat, you take all that stuff, you select it all, and then you start throwing pivots around it. And that works out okay, and you're fairly happy with that. And it's kind of the same thing that we talked about previously in the video that I did on the one big table, right? Where you're bringing in all of the data and you're looking at it inside of either Excel or even inside of Power BI. This is a great way to get up and get started. I did a previous video on that. Go ahead and check that out. You can really do a lot of really great things, with just that simple information. And in fact, being more complex really isn't necessary, right? You can just import that one Excel file and just get up and going, right? And let's not make any of this stuff more complex than it needs to be. But you're going to run into a situation where all of a sudden you have more data than you need to have, right? Or that you could fit inside an Excel file or inside a Power BI, or your Power BI file is starting to grow to more than a gig in size. And it's really starting to bog your system down. Your reports are slow. Well, what do you start to do when you have that? And that's where we start to get into needing to start to slim down the data that you're loading and start to create some aggregations or some dimensions to help you with performance. All right. Now, what we're really talking about here is, and I should be on the other side, like this. All right. What we're really talking about here is how do we start to bring order into this chaos? So as you start to load information, as you start to bring this stuff in, it's easier for you to work with. The files become lighter. Your reports become easier to access and use. And that's where we start to get into the concepts of a Star Schema. And the question about this is, okay, what does that really mean? You've heard people talk about a Star Schema. What the heck is that, right? So the concept of a Star Schema really comes into having a fact table, and that's my orange table that I've got right here, right? This is your fact table, and this has got all of your measures. This has got all of the things that you want to quantify in it. And historically, in the one big table, that was pretty much, you had one big fact table with a whole bunch of dimensional values in it and a whole bunch of facts as well added in there too. But here's what we're going to start to do is we're going to start to break out into things that we call dimensions. Okay. And so these dimensions tables are going to be like, basically they're going to be subjects, or they're going to be entities that you're going to be doing your reporting on. So the number one dimension that almost every model should have would be date, because dates are all very consistent for everyone on the planet, right? So we all have 365 days a year, 12 months. Now, and there, like, the question becomes like, what's your fiscal month? What's your fiscal year? That's where you can go in and define all that stuff. And that's been something that can be really hard for people if you're just using the one big table. Another great use case is on employees. So if you want to have employee information or customer information, repeating that a whole bunch of times inside your model just basically means that you end up having employee information or customer information repeated millions and millions of times. Well, you only need Chris Wagner in the model, so many times, right? You only need it once. You don't need to have it in a million times and taking up a whole bunch of space. This can have a massive impact on the size of your data files, and it can really drive down how big your models are that you're working with on a regular basis, okay? So what we're basically going to be doing is we're going to be taking your one big table. We're going to be transforming that into a quasi-fact table. And I say quasi because it's not going to be quite perfect when we first start this out, but that's okay. Don't let good be perfect be the enemy of good, right? So we're going to get started on doing that. All right. Now, you know how we like to do it. We're going to get up and get going here. All right. We're going to be going over to my laptop. You guys ready? All right, here we go. All right. Oops, I hit the wrong freaking button. That's always the way, isn't it? All right, here we go. Okay, so everything that you need to get up and running inside of this model, because you'll want to, if you're live streaming, follow along with me. But if you're watching this on replay, go ahead, hit pause here, go download the stuff, watch some of these things. It'll get you up and running. Okay. Now, out on kratosbi.com, and I'm going to put some links out inside of the chat for you. You can go out and you can download all of these things. Now, I have what's out here is called the Data God model. If I click on that, it goes right to this page. Out here, I'll have a whole bunch of resources that are available for you when it comes to getting your data model prepped, your first initial Data God data set, a Data God wireframe, all sorts of stuff for your first validation, doing your first pageant report, or even doing some advanced analytics out here. I've got all of this stuff available for you. Just go out and download it. I do recommend that you go out and get started with the install guide that I have for SQL, so you can get a data mart up and running inside your instance. There's 6 videos. It's relatively simple. If you have AdventureWorks up and running someplace already, you can just go out and grab the Data God Data Mart preparation content. It's got a bunch of DDLs in there for some views and content, or specifically some views that you'll use inside these demos to get you up and running. If you are working on a sample data sets that you do for showcases and showing, these views are really helpful because it, AdventureWorks is set, like, I think it's 2012 or something along those lines. These views bring everything up to current, so you're always working with relatively current dates instead of, looking basically a decade in the past. So get started with this, install these things, then head over and check out the first introduction to the Data God model, which is creating a one big table. That will run you through creating out the data model that I have here, right? And so this is the OBT, or one big table data model that we get started with. This is in effect, this is what most people get started with when it comes to working in data in Excel or inside of Power BI. It's a big honking table, right? We've got a whole mess of columns inside of here, right, that we've run through. Now, inside the last video, we went through and we hit a whole bunch of values. We created a bunch of measures so that inside of here you have measures that you're using and you're accessing. This video is going to go into what do you do when this starts to get too large, okay? Now, let's take a look at the data that we have in here, and we're basically going to be going through and adding stuff into our model because, as you can see here, I don't have anything else in my model, right? I've just got the one big table, right? So I go in and I've got a number of things. Like I mentioned earlier, one of the first things we want to do is we want to add in a date dimension, okay? So date dimensions really help you get in and create those fiscal calendar information that can make your reporting more robust and easier to use, okay? So I'm going to hop over and to my data model. I got my AdventureWorks data set here. I do have my date dim, but I've also got my VW date dim. This is the dimension I'm going to use. This also moves the dates forward, but inside your organization, you might have a date dimension. This is something that's really essential for you to get up and running. We're going to add that in first, okay? So first things first, I'm going to go to get my database connections. In this case, it's running on my local host, so it's going to be relatively simple for me to get this up and going. I'm going to go to get data. I'm going to go to SQL Server. I'm going to enter in my server name. I'm going to pop back over because, you know, I am lazy. I like to cheat. I only copy and paste. Those are the rules. I paste that in. I click on OK. And now I wait for it to authenticate. It connects right away. And now I want to go find my VW date dim, which is right here. I click on this guy. It's got all this information here of what's here in preview. I'm just going to go ahead and click on load. It's going to run and it's going to load this information into my model. And I'm going to be okay with applying changes. Now, one thing to note on my date dimension, and this is really important in your date dimension, is that you're joining on the appropriate columns between your models, okay? Now, if I look at my, my one big table file, I see that I've got my date keys here. Now, if I look at these, this is a date key in an integer format in YYYYMMDD format, okay? When I join over to my date dimension, I'm going to be joining and on that exact same field, right? So I want to make sure that when I look at my date dimension, I find that same date key, which is right at the front here, that I'm going to be using inside of my model, okay? So I'm going to go over to my model. And now you can go to manage relationships if you want, and you can define your relationship here. I'm kind of lazy and I like to do things with a drag and drop. So I'm going to go and I'm going to find my order date key, which is the key that I want to, have my primary, modeling and my join to my date dimension by, and I'm going to join it to here. Now, what this is going to do inside my model is it's going to create a one, right, as you can see here, a one to many, which that star is here, from my my order date key over to my date key inside my date dimension, okay? So that means anytime I'm slicing or dicing any information inside of my model, it's now going to automatically slice and dice by this date dimension, right? Now I'm going to go up and I'm going to take a look at this. So I've got my, my grid here. I've got my year opened. In this case, I don't think that's relevant, so I'm going to remove my year open, and I want to test out and see if my date dimension is working, right? So if my date dimension is working, this total product cost should break out by my fiscal year value. So if I drag that in, boom, I see all my values are changing as I go through time. I've now essentially added in this functionality inside of my date model. As I've now joined it to a dimension, okay? Now, this is great. I now have this available inside my model. What I can then do is I can go back into my model and I can start to refactor by pulling out any other dates that I've specifically, any dates that are in here that might be brought forward. In this case, I'm going to go in and I'm going to continue to go through and add in a few more dimensions just to make it easier, because as I start to go in, I see that I've got a whole bunch of pieces of employee information in here, and I could see that, like I mentioned before, I've got Jillian Carson's information in here a whole bunch of times, right? So if I go in and I add in an employee dimension, I'm going to be able to remove all of this employee information from my one big table and slimming down my model significantly, right? So again, it goes back to get data, go to SQL Server, do my connections. So it's AdventureWorks, localhost, right? Connect this in. And I'm going to find my employee dimension here. Now, I don't have any special views on the employee dimension. It's pretty much as it is. So I just click on load. Again, remember, I'm going to, once that gets loaded into my model, I'm going to go to my model framework. And here you can see that it was actually, Power BI is smart enough where it can say, okay, hey, I see this value. And if I highlight over, I can see that it's joining on employee key in my OBT table, as well as my dim employee value over here. So now I have access to all of the fields that are available inside my employee table, and not just the fields that are inside my one big table. So this can really help me not just slim down my table, but it can help me actually enrich, add more information into my model, and make this easier for me to use. Okay. If I click on Manage Relationships, I'm going to see that the two relationships that I've just created, one that I just created that was automatically created appears inside of here. And then the second one is right here. This is the one that I manually created. All right. So both of these are available in here. I can go in, I can edit this stuff up. I can break this out. I can do more things with it. But this allows me to go in, and again, remember, we don't ever make changes without testing them, right? We can then go in and we could start to add in some additional information. And so I'm going to want to make sure that my my employees, and I'm not going to go by middle name. Where's my full name? Oh my gosh, I don't have my full name. So I'm going to go by email address because I don't want to have any things that are missed there. And I want to make sure that we switch over to grids. And we add in the fiscal year right here so we can kind of drill in and see across all of my employees what their sales were like in any given year. And then I can go out, I can validate that this information is correct so that I don't have any disagreements or any values here. What I should also be able to do, and this is a great test, and you can use the Dow model validation tool that I have out on KarosBI.com to test this out, or I can go in and I can remove this employee name from my dim employee, and I can go back and I can test that out because I believe in my one big table, I have email address from the employee contact. So if I click that out, I can see that Amy has the same value here, and the values that are coming through line up are the same for each of the employees, right? So I've added in my date dimensions. I've added my employee dimensions. I've validated that the results I'm seeing are coming through and they're the same regardless of which source I'm using. And that means I now can feel confident that I can go back in and I can start to remove those values from my query and from my model, slimming it down. Now, let's go through that little spot as well. So the best way to come in and do that is to go back to the home page and then go over to Transform Data. All right. Once you click on Transform Data, it's going to bring up your Power Query editor. And here's where we come through and we start going through and start removing columns. And now you have the option of removing columns or choosing columns. Now, I know lots of people go back and forth on this one. I'm a fan for choosing columns that are going to be included inside of my report instead of removing columns. This makes it easier as you go along to continue to refactor and refine your model as you go. So in this case, I know I need to make sure I keep my employee key, right? The employee key is what connects my one big table back to my employee table. So I know I need to make sure that I keep this, but I can go through and I can start to remove all of the values from my employee table that are no longer necessary because I have brought them in as part of the employee dimension, right? I can now also go in and I can see if there's any order date information. Yep, the order date that was added in and brought in here, I no longer need to have this. So I can remove that from my one big table on my load. I can click on OK. It's going to add in some remove other columns here. And then I can click on apply this to my model. It will run. When we get done, we'll pop over here. This should have errored out. This is exactly what I wanted to see because that field that I was using to validate, I've now removed from my model. And so I can now remove this. The reason I like to see this is it ensures that I don't accidentally have multiple employee names or multiple employee emails that are inside my model or the one big file that I'm not even aware of, right? So 100% this is something that is a good thing to do. Now, I can continue to go through and we'll quick run through just one other one where we can go through and do the product categories. But the reality is you just continue to rinse and repeat on this until you get to the point where you've basically removed any of the columns inside of your report that are text inside that one big OBT file. And you basically go from having a one big table to actually having your first star schema. Once you get to the point where you have no more columns that are available inside of your model here, you'll actually see this icon turn from a table over to a fact table icon. I don't have an example for you right here, but this can really help you ensure that, like, have I done everything necessary to slim down my model? Once that happens, you can be assured that you set that up all right. Okay. Now, thank you guys also very much for hopping and joining this live stream. This is something that I think is a super helpful first step for people as they're starting to get involved, starting to work with tabular models, and going from that, hey, I've got one set of data, one big table, and transforming it over into having, I have many little tables in here, or I've got an actual star schema. This is the process I typically run people through when it comes to refactoring these things. Next step is we're going to actually show what do you do when you've got two big tables, right? And how do you start to match those up? And how do you take the transformation that we did with us from a star to when you have multiple stars, right? And so that's where we start to get into the galaxy schema. We'll be doing that in the next live stream or broadcast or recording or whatever it is we actually come up with. Thank you guys all so much for hopping in, joining me, and going through this. I really appreciate you taking the time for this. You guys have a great day. Stay safe. Peace. Oh, I don't have a wrap-up thing. Someone dance. Oh, where's even my stop?